In today's video, we're going to go over 5 of the best Naruto villains. We're going to rank them and we're going to say why. The key thing I want to highlight is, to create a great villain, it's not simply about having a character display super evil traits or acts on screen, because there's many ways to create a great villain. But anyways, without further ado, let's start with number 5. And ironically, we are going with Orochimaru simply for the fact that Orochimaru is purely evil. And the reason why I do like some villains like this is because we don't have to always have the character that's misunderstood. And that's not to say that misunderstood characters aren't good villains. It's just to say that it's good to mix it up. And when it comes to the character design of Orochimaru, he's a well put together, creepy character. And when it comes to the specific evil things that Orochimaru did, he done loads. Him trying to snatch Sasuke's body is nothing. This guy was out here experimenting on kids for decades. And one of his greatest skills is he is a master of manipulation. To the point, even the ones he kidnapped and experimented on, they still felt loyalty to him. And something I really did like when they got him to leave the Akatsuki, I liked him following his own goals. So when he betrayed them, I thought that was a great touch. So when you combine all of this and how he was actually introduced to us as a character, I think it was excellent. It was a very good villain to start with. Next on the list is Toby, and I'm saying Toby specifically because I do not mean Obito. When it turns out that Toby was the true mastermind behind the Akatsuki, when he drops a persona and he reveals the Sharingan, I thought that was a very good twist. Personally, when it comes to most villains, my favorites tend to be the ones that are very cunning and very devious. So Toby misleading us to think he was the goofball and just messing around all the time, it was just really good to kind of see that kind of unfold. Plus, another thing that made him a lot more interesting was the fact that we actually see that he's the one that caused the Nine Tails attack that kind of started everything. And also, no one could figure out how to even beat him. Anyone that even tried to touch him just fell right through his body. So that's also something that made him seem far more dangerous. So overall, Toby was a great villain. But as soon as the mask came off, he became a little bit more whiny and emotional. He loses that persona that I grew to love. He lost that overwhelming presence, and I understand as to why, because he felt like his belief system now is falling apart. However, in regards to the menacing persona he built, it just was crumbling away, and it felt like you're just watching someone completely different, which I guess is ultimately what Obito is. His multiple personalities. He's Toby, he's Madara, and he's actually Obito. Alright, so number 3 may be a little bit controversial, but for me personally, this spot goes to Danzo. Simply because even though many of us really down to our bones hate Danzo, but unlike Orochimaru, he is not truly in fact evil, maybe selfish and highly pragmatic, but not solely evil. All the deeds he did was in fact to protect the leaf by any means necessary, but inadvertently caused more issues than he solved. Every major incident that happened when it comes to the Naruto series, Danzo had a hand in it. He's the one that told everybody that Naruto was a Jinchuriki. He's the one that allowed the coup to go ahead with the Uchiha. He's the one that basically created pain because he got Yahiko killed. So when it comes to, is Danzo a great villain? It's a yes and no answer. Yes, because he is definitely probably the most hated character based on his deeds in the whole series. But the reason he isn't further down on the list is simply because even though I do think his character is perfect, he was written to be hated and he definitely is hated by many. But when it comes to pure villainy, I feel like the other two bring more and also have more of a dominance far greater than Danzo. Moving on to number 2 on the list, we are going with Madara Uchiha. And the reason why Madara is number 2 is simply because he was hyped up for years. And without a doubt, he lived up to it. Once we seen him on the panels or in the series, he was incredibly strong. His extreme power, his knowledge of the ninja world, and virtually every single jutsu. He was almost reacting and counteracting jutsus that we didn't even know that he even knew existed, such as Might Guy's 8 Gates. He even had so much knowledge to the point that he managed to reverse his reanimation from being called back to the dead, like nobody knew that even existed. So things like that just made him seem like such an overwhelming, powerful force that there was going to be no end, which ultimately became Madara the character's downfall, because Kishimoto wrote such a great, intellectual, strong character that he had no idea how he was going to be defeated, which is why we ultimately got that terrible chunk of Zetsu stabbing Madara in the heart and Kaguya coming to life. All of that rubbish was because he couldn't think how the rest of the allied shinobi force would be able to beat Madara. I personally still think they should have just made Might Guy's final attack injure him so much that allowed Team 7 to beat him rather than getting Kaguya. But overall, Kishimoto backed himself into a corner because he ripped Madara just so damn good. But I have to say, one of the greatest things about Madara that I really did like is the fact that there was going to be no talk, no jutsu moment with him. He had his mission, he was about his business, and there was no convincing him, because that began to become a little bit annoying, to be honest. Like, I like some battles to be won by pure might, not just words and tears. Like, every time Naruto's like crying to a character and they bonded, like sometimes it was good, like when he did it with Gaara and when he did it with Zabuza. But sometimes I really wanted to see these characters battle because it would have been cool to see and visualize. So the fact that we could just tell this was not going to be the plan with Madara, it just made him seem that much more of a threat. And most of the characters could barely land a finger on him. And with all of that, which made him a very good villain, it even leveled up even more when we learned that this whole plan, the Eye of the Moon, was actually his grand plan. Minus obviously the Zetsu retcon. All of these things just kept giving him extra layers of greatness, which made him so much more interesting and layered and complex. So when we learned that extra touch to find out that he's actually the one that planned for Rin to be killed, was just an extra last minute touch of evil and greatness that leveled up his villainy. It's almost like they kept making the character better and better and better. So when it comes to Madara, he's a very interesting villain because as somewhat like Danzo, he wasn't truly evil. However, he was willing to do many nefarious things just to ensure that his plan was carried out, which actually was a noble thing, which was to end the fighting between all shinobi and stop young kids having to go off to war. But then we learn he's actually willing to kill kids in this pursuit. So yeah, I do think that Madara is an excellent villain. You know what I mean? It's debatable whether he could be number 1, but for me, I'm going to put him in slot number 2. Now, when it comes to the best villain of the Naruto series, of course, we all knew it was coming. It is Kaguya. And that is a horrible joke. Obviously, it's not Kaguya. When it comes to the number 1 slot, I am giving it to Pain. And I specifically am saying Pain and not Nagato, because once again, it's similar to what I said about Obito and Toby. Because as Pain, not Nagato, he was truly a powerful hidden threat. There was just so much cool mystery about him. Same thing with like Toby. Like you didn't know who he was behind the mask, whereas Pain, you're seeing his face. However, you don't really know much about him. You don't really know how his jutsu works straight away. And then when we find out that he's actually Jiraiya's student, and then trying to figure out who the true Pain is, everything about it was just well crafted. The way that Nagato used the 6 paths of pain, so it was like you're fighting 6 bodies at once, it all just made him seem so much more fierce and powerful. And he comes out the gate killing main characters. My guy, Pain, killed Jiraiya, then he killed Kakashi. And Jiraiya's death, in my opinion, was like the biggest death. So when you remember which character done that, and the fact he was his pupil as well, stacked on top of it, it just seemed like such a shock to the system. When Jiraiya died, I was looking at the screen, truly thinking, oh my god, it's fake. He's going to swim back up. So something like that straight away gave the character of Pain such dominance and such intrigue. And you couldn't wait until he came face to face with Naruto. So at that point, Pain was just an overwhelming force that just stole the show and dealt so much damage to the Leaf as well. So at that point, it kind of left you with the feeling that most of the villagers are dead. So overall, the reason why Pain edges out Madara for me is because I prefer how his backstory was crafted, and his famous quote that really made us, the viewer, and Naruto himself stop and think critically about the actions of the shinobi and war as a whole in real life. That was great. Like that speech from Pain, I've played numerous times on YouTube just because it's just so profound and so deep. So for that reason, it left a very lasting impression. So Pain, for me personally, was up there with one of the great villains of any anime I've probably watched. So personally, that is the reason why Pain had to have the number 1 spot for me. And the next honorable mention is Sasuke, before obviously reconciling with Team 7. And for the reasons, it is virtually the very same as Pain. But anyways, people, let me know down below what you think. Who are your favorite villains